And I'm up there playing, and I've got my eyes closed and I'm concentrating. And the next thing you know, hello YouTube, and welcome back. Talking Blues. We're sitting on my porch here in New Orleans, smoking a La Opulencia cigar by my father's cigar factory, Pepin, and drinking an Abita King Cake soda, seasonal soda. It is Mardi Gras carnival season here. Here we go. So let me tell you a little bit about the worst gig I ever had. Okay. So I was gonna tell you guys about two different gigs, right? Why? I wanted to make the distinction of the worst gig I ever had that was my fault, and then the worst gig that I ever had that was not my fault. Let's start with the one that's not my fault. I'm gonna say circa 2005, 2006. And I can remember that it was close to around there because at that time we signed with a better booking agency. And that booking agency would not have had us in a club like this. The club was in a town called Sharon, Pennsylvania. Sharon, Pennsylvania, as far as I know, was famous for one thing really particular, which was Trent Reznor from Nine Inch Nails was from Sharon, Pennsylvania. Now, I think they had had some factories there and stuff back in the day that were no longer there. But they had a club, and the club was called Quaker Steak and Lube. Quaker Steak and Lube. That was the name of the club. And it was like primarily bar food and chicken wings and beer. Primarily chicken wings. It was buffalo style wings. That's what they did. And if I remember, they did them very well. We had been playing the club for many years in our travels. And I think they booked off nights. Like I think you could get in there on Tuesday and Wednesday or something. Or I can't remember. Maybe it was just Friday and Saturday. I don't know. We ended up there a lot. They put us in the hotel, and we would go play the club. We had to bring our own PA system. That was back in the day before we got big enough that we only played venues that had that stuff. So that took up a lot of room in the van, and we would have to set it up, and we did. We set it up, and we played it. And we had a pretty regular group of people that would come to this gig and listen and watch the band. It was a small stage. I think I remember that we were all on it. At first I was picturing just the drum riser. And I think maybe it was a corner stage and there was a little drum riser. Anyway, none of this is important to the story. I'm just trying to set the settings. Wall-to-wall carpeting. Like old little tin signs all over the walls that were probably remade, not original, but like made kind of like Cracker Barrel to look like they were from the 30s or 40s or 50s. And a big bar in the middle of the room, okay? And then there was an area where people would sort of dance in front of us. Back in the day, the band was first starting out. So this was Jason Ricci and New Blood was the band. Sean Starsky, Todd Edmonds was on bass, and I believe Steve Johnson, the Swingin' Johnson, on drums. So we played the gig, and we for the umpteenth time, right? And we were hungry back then, so we would play for longer. And we didn't care, and we weren't like we are now, where where you really kind of can't play for longer. You're contracted for this amount of time, and maybe you go over a little bit, but not a lot, right? But back then it was just the wild, wild west. We would play at these places. Sometimes we'd play an extra hour or 2 hours and stay up all night, and guys in the band would get drunk or get high and stuff like this, right? That's not the case anymore. It's much more professional than that now. Thank goodness. But this particular evening was another one of those evenings where we decided that we were going to play much, much later. And we were into it. The audience was into it, and they were dancing, and the gig was going great. And the dance floor was packed, and the owner of the club, whose name I can't remember, I'm not omitting it, I would say it if I could remember it. The owner of the club came from the side, around the side of the bar, out into the middle of the dance floor, carrying a stripper's pole, like a big brass pole about this thick, that had the brackets on the top, the big square bracket where you would, bolt it into the ceiling of, and the floor so that it would stay stable. But he had it unbolted, and he carried it out into the middle of the dance floor. And I was playing what was going to be the last song of the evening. Now, keep in mind, we were already at least a half an hour or an hour over our due time. So I think we were supposed to quit at like 1 in the morning, and it was now like 1:30, and here comes the owner with this brass stripper's pole, playing this harmonica finale song. They're going off in it. You guys have probably Googled it. It's just a big harmonica, show off thing. He's got the stripper pole, and he's holding it up. And these women, some of them large in stature, are coming up and grabbing onto the pole and trying to do stripper moves on it. But keep in mind, it's not bolted to the ceiling. It's not anywhere close to touching the ceiling. And he's holding it and trying to support at least 2 different women that are grabbing and climbing up this pole and trying to be all sexy and stuff. And I'm up there playing, and I've got my eyes closed, and I'm concentrating. And the next thing you know, I wake up, and the entire club is quiet, and everybody's gathered around me. And I got blood all over my head. And I'm unconscious, and I'd been out for a little while. Luckily, I didn't pee on myself. But what had happened was the girls had gotten on the stripper pole, and the weight of them he could no longer support. And the pole came down, and that square metal bracket where you screw it into the ceiling came and had hit me right on the head and knocked me unconscious. Okay. So, anyway, that was the end of the gig. What makes it the worst gig of all time is not even that. It's not even that. That's not that bad. That was an accident. It could have happened to anybody who was trying to have a good time with a stripper's pole and a band. The bad part is that he emailed my booking agency and told them that we wouldn't play anymore. Or we didn't play late enough. That's the bad part. We didn't play late enough. So he was angry that after we were 30 minutes at least, like I said, maybe an hour over the time that we were supposed to play, he was angry that after he had accidentally knocked me unconscious with a brass stripper pole, that I didn't continue playing the gig. That is the worst gig ever. That was not my fault. Everybody, before we get into the rest of the story here, I want to first give what they call a trigger warning here and let you know that the following story contains pretty graphic information about my past in dealing with hard substances like crack cocaine and heroin. If you're suffering from addiction
or battling addiction or currently in and out of addiction, I want to let you know that there's a variety of ways to recover from harm reduction to 12-step programs and lots of different things in between, including evidence-based recovery programs. I have other videos on this subject, and a simple Google search will really, really help you. The most important thing is you stay alive. The story that I'm about to get into is in no way, shape, or form meant to glamorize in any kind of rock star kind of way these substances. They were the cause of the end of an incredible band and some really beautiful relationships which are still struggling today as a result of my addiction and my substance abuse. So there's nothing exciting or fun. It leads to a really, really dark and lonely place that I can basically epitomize as a lack of connection with other human beings. So if this is something you're suffering from or battling, I encourage you to get help as soon as you can in any way, shape, or form. The kind of help that you're ready to get now, get it no matter what. The only good that can come out of any of this is that you guys can see that it is possible to recover. I don't regret my past because it is these experiences that can maybe help me qualify with somebody else that has had similar experiences to know that recovery is possible. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the video.
The worst gig ever, that was my fault. 2010. The Boulder Outlook Hotel in Boulder, Colorado. So in 2010, at the beginning of the year, I was 12 years sober. And the types of drugs and alcohol that I do when I engage in this behavior are crack and heroin, mostly. So it had been 12 years since I had done any of those drugs. I had initially gotten sober in '98, and then I stayed sober until 2010. I had relapsed on the road in Cleveland. Cleveland, this is close to the worst gig ever. Oh boy, I could really go on. I won't go into that one. You'll have to wait for the book for that one. The gig that led up to the relapse, right? It wasn't the reason I relapsed. It was just a chain of events that upset me enough that I finally made the decision to do something that I had been planning, more or less. This was after that. So I had tried to continue using and touring, but I wasn't doing crack and heroin on the road, really. I was smoking pot and drinking. Okay. And then occasionally, after the gig was over, and by occasionally I mean a few times a week, after the gig was over, I would go out and do crack and heroin. And then I would stay out all night, mostly crack. And then when it was time to get in the van in the morning to go to the next gig, I would start drinking in order to go to sleep. So I wasn't able to drive, and the band had to take care of me. And my attitude was, well, I've taken care of these guys for 10 years. They can take care of me while this is going on, you know. And that's a crappy attitude. You're the band leader. You're supposed to. That's what you're supposed to do. They're not supposed to take care of you. That's why, theoretically, you get paid more, even though most of the time you get paid less. That's why your name's on the marquee. That's a better way to put it. So here we are out in Boulder, and we're there for this thing that was run by a nice guy named Dan King. Dan King had helped a lot of musicians. During Katrina, a bunch of musicians from New Orleans went out to Boulder and stayed at the hotel for free, and were given rooms and gigs and ways to make money out there. And he had helped me with the original harmonica collective, which was called Rockers in the Rockies, and he had just been booking the band forever and was a friend to musicians everywhere, all over the country. Really, really good guy. And so the band was part of a festival, so to speak, that he had organized that was like, I think for some reason it was called the Blues Cruise on Land or something like that. And it was a bunch of bands would play the Boulder Outlook Hotel, and we would all stay there, and we would take turns playing all day long and all night for a few days in a row. And so it was like you could go and get tickets and stay at the hotel and see all the bands all day long for 3 or 4 days. And that's how it worked. And so I was part of this, and we got there, and I think we got there a day early. And so we check into the rooms, and I had this like shuttle bus thing at that time. I don't think that shuttle bus, it got maybe a few tours before the band exploded and collapsed for reasons which you're about to hear. And so anyway, I decided I was going to go get high, and not marijuana, not beer. So I drive into Denver, and I get some crack. And unfortunately, I involved somebody else. I mean, I brought somebody with us, right? With me from Boulder. And eventually, I think the first time I just went in, I got it myself. And I just went into the center of the city. You don't have to know anybody. This is not going to be a story on how to cop crack. So I'm not going to tell you how to do that if you don't already know. If you know, you're probably trying to forget it. Anyway, look, I got it. And then, so the rest of the day was me driving in and out of town over and over and over again, doing this a few times. And I think it may have, it's very difficult for me to remember. It may have gone over the course of an evening and into the next day. That's what I think happened. It's getting near the time that I have to play. And I haven't been to bed yet. I've been up for over 24 hours smoking crack. And in my hotel room and on the road and driving back and forth to Denver. Now, one of the hardest things to do when you're smoking crack is stop smoking crack. As a matter of fact, when the drug runs out, there's a feeling of absolute dread, which I cannot describe to you. That is how I got hooked on heroin. The heroin alleviates or eliminates the urge to do more. Okay, it certainly helps. Helps is an understatement. I didn't have any heroin. I hadn't gotten any. And I had to go play the gig. And I had run out of crack, and I was a mess. And my main fear was that I would not go to the gig, that I would go back into town and get more crack. So I searched for the next best thing to heroin in this situation, which is Valium or Xanax. Either one of those substances will alleviate the anxiety and the dread and the discomfort that comes with abruptly stopping the use of crack cocaine. I walked up through the parking lot to the gig, and I ran into a couple of women, and I asked around, and sure enough, somebody had some Valium or Xanax. I can't remember which it was. And they gave it to me. And I took I took too many. I took too many of them. But I started feeling okay. I didn't feel like I had taken too many. I went back to the room. I got a shower. I got my act together. I got dressed, and I went to the gig, and I set up my equipment, or maybe the guys had to have set it up for me, right? This is how bad it was back then. The guys, oftentimes I would just not show up to the gig until right before we'd have to play, and the guys would set up my equipment. I think that's what happened, yeah. I think that's how bad it was. The guys had set up my equipment. I think I remember that. I remember very little. I'm about to black out here in the story. I remember coming in there and maybe even somebody saying, I hope this is okay with like where your amp was set up. That is all I really remember. Other than I remember that I did not play or did not sing well. But I don't remember what I didn't play well. I remember it feeling like Valium and Xanax. Like slow, and me not knowing things, and maybe probably didn't remember any of the lyrics. Probably didn't remember anything. I don't know what that performance looked like. I have zero recollection at all. But eventually it was over, and I went back to my hotel room, and then I went back into the city, and this is when I brought somebody innocent into all this that had never even done any of these drugs before, and got them doing it with me. And we were in it, and I was in this hotel room doing more crack and not knowing what happened at the gig. And then eventually the person left or something, or they were taken out. They got out of somebody came and got them out of the room. And I was still in the room, and I think maybe I had gotten heroin at that point. I was now no longer like conscious, and there was banging on the door to the room. I don't know how many days after. This was the next day, the day after that. I don't even know. No recollection at all. Pounding on the door, and eventually the door opened by itself, even though it was locked. And Bob Margolin, Muddy Waters' old guitar player, had gotten a key from Dan King, the owner of the hotel, to come into my room. And Bob, having been in Muddy's band and being older than myself and being a musician that's been on the road for a long time, was not unfamiliar with the kind of behavior that I was exhibiting, or the situation that I was in, that he was now in, that the venue was now in, my band was now in, having to deal with this behavior, these substances, people, potential death, potential overdose, bad gigs, all the like, all the above. And Bob had a talk with me. And I don't remember much about that either. I do remember, I think we finished the rest of the tour somehow. Didn't go well. There was big fights in the van, and for obvious reasons. It was near the end. Very, very near the end of New Blood, for obvious reasons. That was the worst gig ever. That was my fault. And I think I've heard numerous people say that was the blues cruise that Jason sank, right? Or the blues cruise on land that Jason managed to sink, or something like that. Yeah, it was bad. It was really, really bad. And that was the worst gig that was ever my fault. Good news is, shortly after that, I went to jail for a year, which will be the subject of another Talking Blues. And then began the process of trying to get sober again, which has taken a long time, but resulted in some years getting put together, and then not, and then together again. But all a learning process. I hope you enjoyed this very enlightening tale. The ones that were my fault, and the ones that were the one that was someone else. Now, there's many more that are my fault, and there's many more that are not. Those are just the two that came to mind for this episode. Thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned for the credits.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to Jason Ricci's YouTube channel. 16 years of incredible YouTube harmonica-related content. That's right, 16 years. At this point, over 500 free instructional videos. If you're interested in what kind of harmonicas I play, microphones, amplifiers, pedals, any harmonica related products, please check out my sponsors. These sponsors, in one way or another, also help keep these videos going. Who am I talking about? I'm talking about Blue Moon Harmonicas, bringing you the best in custom harmonicas. We got custom cover plates, custom combs. You can get your name put on it, just like me. Reed work, refurbished pre-war Marine bands. Look at that, they put the little brace there, no more crushing the covers. The Lone Wolf Blues Company, the very best in pedals, microphones, almost anything you need for your amplified harmonica need. The Lone Wolf Blues Company, right here out of Ponchatoula, Louisiana. We got you. Harp gear, amplifiers. They got big ones, they got small ones. You know what they sound like? They sound like the best tube amps on the market. Harp gear amplifiers out of Ocala, Florida. Pedal pad, pedal boards. Incredible custom pedal boards built to last, made by two brothers who really, really care. Hohner harmonicas. A Mooncat loves the Hohner harmonica. I like the Marine band. I get Tom to put the little special 20 cover plates on it. He tricks them out, but they play great right out of the box. All of these sponsors are linked below in the description box. What else is linked below? Patreon. Consider becoming a Patreon patron. You'll be supporting me. You'll be supporting the cause. You'll be keeping these videos free for everybody. And you'll get a lot of extra content over at Patreon. You'll get vlogs, occasionally some extra lessons, some posts that you might not see on Facebook. A lot of stuff that I can't say or won't say here on YouTube is over on Patreon. I love my Patreon family. You guys are the best. If you're not into the monthly subscription, you can also give me a one-time tip at Venmo or PayPal below too. I'm a touring musician and I play all over the country, really all over the world with all kinds of different acts. Check out my website, www.mooncat.org. In all seriousness, YouTube, Patreon, my sponsors have absolutely changed my life. Subscribe below, set reminders for the videos. Don't miss any events. Every single Friday there's a free harmonica lesson and a lot more. Even if you're just subscribing, you're helping me a lot. Those of you that are joining me on Patreon, you guys are helping me to make better decisions with my career. In all sincerity, thank you so much, YouTube, for just an incredible, incredible outlet. It's a video diary. I get to look back at 16 years of these videos. Met a lot of new friends, some really fine musicians, made some great contacts in the industry, and it's all because of you. Thank you, my harmonica family.